longing for the past, a dreamy thought, a desire for prior experiences, the subtle sound of a drifting piano, the breezy winds of a wavy coast, Spider-Man 2 on the Game Boy Advance, which I never finished because it was too hard. Nostalgia means something different to everyone, whether it be a complex emotion to cope with your loneliness, or a wistful remembrance of your favorite Sonic game that distracted you from reality. We can all agree that we have felt this confused emotion to some extent. I believe that nostalgia influences our memories to make them appear better than they actually were. I'm sure you are already familiar with this, so why did I make you click on this video? Well, that's simple. The capitalization on nostalgia, because Lord knows companies definitely have not been selling you plastic with basically nothing inside. Oh, now they're selling cardboard. Talk about budgetary restrictions. Recently it seems businesses have found their consumers' weakness: childhood nostalgia, and oh boy, have they exploited it to the moon and back. In cinemas and streaming services, we have had a few attackers. Numero 1, Fuller House. The continuation of Full House, which was a family sitcom of 3 men raising 3 daughters, filled with childish jokes and catchy slogans.
Got it, dude!
The show tried to teach a lesson in each episode. Even though I didn't grow up in the 90s when it initially aired, I still managed to watch a handful of reruns, which I enjoyed despite its extremely quirky nature. And when I say extremely quirky nature, I mean it with full heart. However, being a show that many people look back fondly of, it was destined to have a sequel, which I ended up watching all 3 seasons of the sequel, because when I'm depressed, I just binge watch half of Netflix library. I have to say, I wasn't surprised. It was not good. It was not great. It was not terrible. But it certainly does not deserve a 7 out of 10 on IMDb. That is uncalled for. Who did this? The jokes were stale. The show was boring, and it felt like I already watched the show. So why is this there? Stranger Things, an actual great Netflix show, which I can finally talk about. It is set in the 80s and is able to entertain all generations. People growing up in the 80s find a powerful connection and feeling of nostalgia with the show due to its meticulously detailed setting, popular activities, synth soundtrack, memorable characters, and more. Young and old have fallen in love with the show. Its storytelling is superb, and it's an example of a nostalgic show done right. But there are plenty of these shows and movies not done right. To give some examples that are even worse than Fuller House, the reboot of Ben 10. With an IMDb rating of 2.6 out of 10, it will not be winning any awards, to say the least. This show was a major flop and personally disappointing to me, as I used to spend hours watching the original Ben 10 and playing the Nintendo DS game, which I also never finished. Okay, I wasn't that good at video games. Please don't kill me in the comments.
I'm going to attempt to be as objective as possible, as nostalgia plays a big role for me in terms of what games I play. It might dictate which games I delve into, and that's not inherently bad. In fact, if it weren't for the roster of Super Smash Bros. Consisting of all these iconic characters, it would lose at least a little bit of its charm. And same goes for a lot of games that probably utilize nostalgia. I do believe there are good nods to the past, Easter eggs and references, well-crafted revivals, and other tactics. It's all circumstantial. To give an example of nostalgia done right, I'd argue Shovel Knight. Taking aspects from beloved classics such as DuckTales and other NES titles, it retains the classic feel with modern elements. That, and there's clearly passion put into the game. On the other hand, I believe Mighty No. 9 tries too hard to bank off of nostalgia from just one title, Mega Man, and ends up being executed poorly. As much as I've noticed AAA developers lacking new IPs, oftentimes being a sequel or reboot of some sort to appeal to those who enjoyed the predecessor, I can't complain too much due to the thriving world of the indie market providing really solid titles. As fun as it is to laugh at the half-assed titles on Steam, games such as Null Vector, Risk of Rain, and Cuphead really showcase nostalgia done right, with less about greed and more about compassion. There's also been a resurgence in plug-and-play consoles, all varying in quality. One of the most well-known and recent renditions was the Mini NES and SNES. Ignoring the enigma that surrounds it regarding underproduction, the concept is decent. I'd argue buying them on Virtual Console is much more practical, but the original controllers are irreplaceable. It essentially allows you to play the classic titles on your own. It really showcases how many people really do give into this nostalgia nostalgia. Whether that's taken advantage of is completely subjective. And in the end, it really depends on execution.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Sub to me if you want, and sub to Blunderly if you want, and comment something down below. Just something, you know, quote unquote something. Alright, bye.
Just like Michael Jackson did. I'm rocking the suburbs.